One of the most common questions that arises when reading the New Testament accounts of Jesus' death and resurrection is this: if Jesus died on a Friday afternoon and rose early Sunday morning, how does that add up to 3 days and 3 nights? At best, that sounds like only a day and a half by our modern way of measuring time. Yet again and again, the Gospels say that Jesus would rise on the 3rd day, and in Matthew 12 verse 40, Jesus himself says, "For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." This has led some people to suggest the Gospels are inconsistent, or that we've misunderstood when Jesus actually died. But before we jump to conclusions, we need to ask a deeper question: are we viewing this through modern eyes instead of ancient ones? Because if we do take the time to understand how the people of Jesus' time counted days, and what they meant by phrases like 3 days and 3 nights, what we'll discover is that the Gospel accounts are not only consistent, but beautifully precise in their timing. You see, the biblical world did not keep time the way we do. The ancient Jews did not start their day at midnight. A new day began at sunset. This is rooted in Genesis 1, where God creates the world. And the evening and the morning were the first day, Genesis 1 verse 5. So when the sun set on Thursday evening, by Jewish reckoning it was already Friday. That changes how we look at the timeline of Jesus' arrest, trial, death, burial, and resurrection. When Jesus was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane late Thursday night, that was already, in Jewish time, Friday. That same day he was crucified, died around the 9th hour, about 3 p.m., and was buried before sunset. He remained in the tomb through Saturday, the Sabbath. Then, early Sunday morning, the women came to the tomb and found it empty. So that gives us Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 3 distinct days in Jewish understanding. But what about the nights? What about that 3 days and 3 nights phrase in Matthew 12 verse 40? Isn't that more exact? Doesn't that imply a full 72 hours, 3 full days and 3 full nights? That's where we need to understand how Hebrew idioms and expressions work. The phrase a day and a night was a common way of referring to any part of a day. It didn't require a full 24-hour period. This is seen in other parts of Scripture as well, and once we recognize that, the timeline of Jesus' death and resurrection fits perfectly within the idiom and the cultural context of his day. Let's walk through the timeline step by step, with both the Gospel accounts and Jewish customs in mind. Jesus shares the Last Supper with his disciples on what we would call Thursday evening. This meal is widely understood to be either the traditional Passover meal or a meal held in the Passover season, depending on how one reads John versus the Synoptic Gospels. After the meal, he goes to Gethsemane to pray. It is here that Judas arrives with soldiers, and Jesus is arrested late in the night. By Jewish reckoning, the day had already changed, it was now Friday. He is taken through a series of rush trials, first before the Jewish council, then to Pontius Pilate, then to Herod, and back to Pilate. Pilate eventually, though reluctantly, condemns him to be crucified. Around the 3rd hour of the day, which is 9 a.m., he is nailed to the cross. At noon, darkness covers the land, and around the 9th hour, or 3 p.m., Jesus dies. Mark 15 verses 33 to 34 tells us, "And when the 6th hour was come, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour Jesus cried with a loud voice, and gave up the ghost." He is buried quickly, before sunset, because the Sabbath is about to begin. Luke 23 verse 54 says, "And that day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew on." This is Friday, or more specifically, day 1. He remains in the tomb all day Saturday, the Sabbath. This is day 2. Then, very early Sunday morning, he rises. Matthew 28 verse 1 says, "In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. And they find the tomb empty. Jesus has already risen." This is day 3. But is that really 3 days and 3 nights? It's important to note that in ancient Jewish idiom, any part of a day counted as a full day and night. This usage appears in 1 Samuel 30 verses 12 to 13, where an Egyptian servant says he had not eaten for 3 days and 3 nights, and then immediately says he fell sick 3 days ago, clearly not 72 hours earlier, but simply 3 calendar days. Similarly, Esther 4 verse 16 asks the Jews to fast for 3 days, night and day, yet in Esther 5 verse 1, she appears before the king on the 3rd day, again, not after 3 full days and nights, but during the 3rd day. Jesus' own use of language follows this pattern. In Matthew 16 verse 21, he says, "From that time forth began Jesus to show unto his disciples, how that he must go unto Jerusalem, and be killed, and be raised again the 3rd day." He says the 3rd day, not after 3 days. Luke 24 verse 7 repeats this, quoting the angels at the tomb. "The Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, and be crucified, and the 3rd day rise again." And again in 1 Corinthians 15 verse 4, Paul writes, "And that he was buried, and that he rose again the 3rd day according to the Scriptures." So from Friday, day 1, through Saturday, day 2, to Sunday morning, day 3, the timeline holds up, according to Jewish custom, Jewish speech, and biblical precedent. Even Jesus' enemies understood this. In Matthew 27 verses 63 to 64, the chief priests go to Pilate and say, "Sir, we remember that deceiver said, while he was yet alive, after 3 days I will rise again. Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure until the 3rd day." They clearly didn't expect a literal 72-hour wait. They were worried something would happen by the 3rd day, meaning they themselves interpreted Jesus' words within the common idiom of the time. So the phrase 3 days and 3 nights is not a contradiction, and it doesn't require us to invent a different crucifixion day. It fits exactly into the Friday to Sunday model when understood in the language and culture of the time. So in the end, what seemed like a contradiction turns out to be a matter of perspective. When we read the Gospel accounts through modern lenses, using our Western 24-hour clock and midnight to midnight days, the timeline looks too short. But when we step into the world of Jesus, of 1st century Judaism, everything fits. Their way of counting days was not ours, but it was consistent, meaningful, and understood by everyone at the time. Jesus himself, the Gospel writers, the apostles, and even his enemies all spoke in the same way: he would rise on the 3rd day. And he did. Friday was day 1, Saturday was day 2, and Sunday morning was day 3. 3 days and 3 nights was not a stopwatch, but a well-known figure of speech that perfectly matches the resurrection story. Far from being inconsistent, this detail, once understood, actually becomes evidence of the Gospel's authenticity. It shows they were written by people within that culture, not inventing a story centuries later. It shows that Jesus fulfilled his own prediction, exactly as he said he would. And it reminds us, as Luke 24 verse 8 says of the women at the tomb, that when we remember his words in context, we understand. And they remembered his words. Jesus rose on the 3rd day, just as foretold, just as promised, and just as it was written.